They said my brother deserved the company, now they're begging me to save it. But I already hired their best people and took their clients. Let me tell you how it all unfolded. Before then, we share stories like this every day. If you love them, don't forget to subscribe. We are on a journey to our first 100 subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. Kindly leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. We'd love to stay connected. Now let's get into the details of the story. I always knew I was the contingency plan. The one who stayed late, fixed the messes, made the margins work. But at family dinners, all anyone talked about was Jacob, my older brother, the visionary of our family's construction business. My father called him born for leadership, while I was reliable. In other words, invisible. So I kept my head down, did the books, landed clients, grew revenue by 30% last year alone. But when Dad announced he was retiring, it was Jacob who got the keys, and me who got silence. They made the handoff at a company party. Champagne, speeches, a plaque with Jacob's name already engraved. I stood at the back of the room, applauding with the rest of the staff I managed every day. No mention of me. No thanks. Just Jacob taking the mic and declaring the future was bright. I knew then what kind of future it would be, for them, not for me. I didn't argue. I didn't whine. But something snapped. A quiet, irreversible shift. If they didn't see my value now, they never would. The next few months were brutal. Jacob walked in late, left early, spent more time networking than running numbers. He made reckless promises to clients, cut staff to make margins look better, and ignored operational gaps I warned him about. I sent emails, no reply. Held meetings, he no-showed. But my name was still on everything. I was still expected to clean it all up. I started documenting every misstep, every loss, every red flag. Not for them, never again for them. For me, for later. Then came the project with Langford Steel, one of our biggest clients. Jacob mishandled the bid, misquoted time frames and budget. When they backed out, my father blamed the economy. Jacob blamed bad intel. I watched 6 months of relationship building vanish in an instant. That's when I made my decision. I stayed up all night and registered my own LLC. A quiet whisper of an idea, not even a website yet. But it was mine. Mine alone. I was done being someone else's backup plan. At first, no one noticed. I worked both jobs in parallel, my day job fixing Jacob's screw-ups, my night hours shaping the bones of something better. I called 3 key clients from my old portfolio, just checking in, nothing pushy. They asked what happened to the attention they used to get. I smiled. Let me show you something, I said. By the end of the call, they were curious. By the end of the month, I had my first contracts. I didn't poach. I didn't sabotage. I simply offered what they'd stopped getting: competence, consistency, integrity, the values I thought our family stood for. One by one, they drifted toward me. I also approached staff, quietly. People who were exhausted by Jacob's leadership, but too afraid to speak up. I didn't sell them promises. I offered them purpose. And a seat at a table where their names would be remembered. Where mine finally was too. My resignation wasn't dramatic. Just a simple email sent at 8:01 a.m. on a Monday. I left my badge on Jacob's desk and walked out without a word. No one chased me. No one called. They were too busy trying to close the leak they hadn't noticed was a flood. And I was already sprinting towards something they couldn't catch. The best part? They didn't even know they were bleeding yet. 2 months later, my father called. Said Jacob was adjusting. That the transition had bumps, but I should stop sulking. I almost laughed. I told him I was busy with contracts. He asked what kind. I gave him the name of the client they lost. Silence. Then he mumbled, "You'll come back, once this phase passes." I hung up, not in anger, but in clarity. I had finally passed the point of needing his approval. Or anyone's. Word spread fast. My little firm, Grainline Strategies, was gaining traction. I didn't advertise. Didn't post a single press release. I let results speak. One by one, their former vendors came to me. Then their contractors. Then their clients. By the time Jacob realized who was taking his calls, it was too late. He asked our old admin to check in on me. I told her kindly, I don't take walk-ins. I never did. 3 months later, I got a call from Karen, our former HR manager. She had always favored Jacob, even after he forgot her birthday 3 years in a row. But this time, her voice trembled. Jacob's struggling. He could use your insight. Insight? That was rich. I said I was in meetings all week. Can you fit something in next week? She asked. I told her I'd try. I never did. I checked their website out of curiosity. Outdated photos. A portfolio missing major accounts. The homepage was glitchy, the leadership page still listing me under operations. I sent them a note. Please remove my name. I don't represent your company, your values, or your failures. 2 days later, the site went down entirely. Rumor was their marketing lead quit. I didn't ask where she went. I already knew. She was drafting proposals for me now. There was one last call. From my brother. Late night. No caller ID, but I knew it was him. I messed up, he said quietly. I thought I could do it. I didn't respond. Dad says you should come back. We'll give you full control. The team misses you. The team? Or the clients? Or the money? I said only one thing before hanging up. You were right. I wasn't leadership material for your company. I looked out at the office I had built from nothing: glass walls, focused people, a rhythm of respect. This was mine. Earned. Unborrowed. And finally, unburdened. 2 weeks after that late-night call from Jacob, I got a message from one of their foremen. A guy named Rick who had worked at our family's firm for over 15 years. They bounced payroll again, it read. No introduction. No fluff. Just those words. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I reread it, feeling nothing. No shock. No sympathy. Just a cold confirmation of what I already knew. The family business was falling apart, and the people in charge still thought they could patch it with duct tape and denial. The silence afterward said everything. No follow-up from Jacob. No apology from Dad. They were too proud to admit things had slipped out of their hands. But the cracks were widening fast. I started getting more calls, anonymous at first. Vendors chasing unpaid invoices. Former clients trying to track down warranties. Even a competitor asked if I had any insight into why my brother's firm had defaulted on a steel order. I didn't tell them what I knew. That Jacob had been gambling with cash flow for months, hoping the next project would cover the last disaster. What surprised me most wasn't how fast it fell, but how hard they tried to keep it quiet. My father still posted photos on social media of team lunches and ribbon cuttings, pretending the company was thriving. My mother told extended family I was still helping out behind the scenes. Lies. All of it. And all to protect the image of a son who hadn't lifted a real finger in years. Meanwhile, the real workers, the employees who'd built that company, were bailing water while the ship sank under leadership that didn't care. I found out from an old vendor that Jacob had tried to secure a bridge loan. The bank said no. Credit rating too low. Collateral too risky. Apparently, he even asked to mortgage the main office building, the one our grandfather had built. I should have felt heartbroken hearing that, but instead, I just felt vindicated. This was the cost of their choices. Of calling me not ready, while handing the business to someone who thought spreadsheets managed themselves. They'd handed the legacy to the loudest voice instead of the quietest worker. I wasn't done growing Grainline Strategies. We had just landed a new commercial complex downtown. 6 figures, 6 months, and 6 subcontractors. All the best names, many of whom had, until recently, worked with my brother. I didn't gloat. I didn't even mention it. I just delivered results. Quietly, efficiently, and thoroughly. It felt like building something out of ashes, but not my ashes. Theirs. And I made sure my people knew. We rise by doing it right. Not fast, not loud. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I drove past the old company's office one evening. The lights were off. A paper sign taped to the glass door read, "Office closed for maintenance." I parked across the street and watched for a while. No one came in. No one came out. Just stillness. The kind that clings to failure. I snapped a photo, not out of spite, but to remember this moment. The place where they told me I was too cautious to lead had gone dark under someone reckless. The final blow came on a Thursday morning. One of the old clients, the Hargrove Group, called me directly. "Jacob said you might be able to help," the voice on the other end said hesitantly. I paused. "With what?" I asked. "Recovering the build. It's behind schedule. Permits weren't filed properly." Materials are missing. And the last invoice, well, we're not even sure who to talk to anymore. I leaned back in my chair. I'll have to think about it, I said calmly. I already had. My answer would be no. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about standards. I wouldn't clean up a mess made by people who refused to value my time, my voice, or my name. Especially not the brother who never apologized. Especially not the father who still hadn't picked up the phone to ask how I was. They wanted a safety net they once cut me out of. Now that it was torn, they were looking back. But I had built something better, a platform. One where I didn't need saving, and I didn't know anyone rescue. Karen, the old HR manager, tried one more time. She emailed, "Everyone's scared. They need a leader who actually understands operations. You could turn this around." I replied only once. I already did. Just not for you. Then I archived her thread and blocked the address. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't celebrate it. But it felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. Like I had finally stepped out of their echo chamber and into my own voice. My team at Grainline started noticing the shift. I was lighter, focused, more present. One of the interns said, "You run this place like a conductor." I smiled. I'd never been called that before, but I liked it. Because unlike my brother, I didn't need to be the center of attention. I just needed the orchestra to play well. And they were. Every project ahead of schedule. Every invoice paid. Every staffer proud to come in every morning. That's what leadership looked like. Not press conferences. Not birthdays remembered or family photos staged. Eventually, the news broke publicly. A short blurb in the local paper, "Keller and Sons suspends operations amid financial crisis." No mention of Jacob. No quotes from Dad. Just a quiet death of a legacy they'd spent more time protecting than nurturing. People texted me. "Well, damn. You okay?" I replied with a simple message. "I'm better than I've ever been." And I meant it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't in anyone's shadow. I was standing under my own light. It started with a knock on my office door. Not the physical one. This was digital. A message from my father. Just a short email with the subject line, "Lunch." I didn't open it right away. Just seeing it made my chest tighten. After all this time, after all the silence, this was how he reached out? No explanation. No apology. Just the illusion of normalcy. I hovered over the trash icon. But something in me wanted to hear how they'd spin it. 2 days later, it was Jacob. He showed up in person. He stood in the lobby of my company like he belonged there, dressed in his usual blazer, all charm and desperation. I watched from upstairs as my assistant stalled him. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked politely. "He'll want to see me," Jacob insisted, glancing around nervously. I almost let him sweat. Almost. Then I told her to send him in. If he was going to beg, I wanted to watch him do it properly. He sat across from me, trying to smile. I didn't return it. He looked older, thinner. The confident shine he always wore was dimmed now. "I'm here to talk, brother to brother," he started. I raised an eyebrow. "You haven't been my brother for years," I replied. He swallowed hard. "Look, I messed up. The company's in rough shape. We're trying to restructure. We need someone who actually knows what they're doing." I leaned forward. "You mean someone you once called too timid to lead?" He chuckled weakly, but I didn't. "You were always the smarter one," he said, trying to flatter me. But Dad never really saw it. I let that hang there. It was the closest thing to an admission I was ever going to get. "We can bring you back in. Clean slate. Fix things together. Just like old times." I laughed at that. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was dry and cutting. "There were no old times, Jacob. Just years of you playing boss and me cleaning your messes behind closed doors." He dropped the smile. "Okay, look, the truth is, we need you. The board is getting involved. There's talk of dissolving assets. If we lose this firm, we lose everything Grandpa built." I stared at him. "You lost that the day you pushed me out to protect your ego. Grandpa built that company on integrity. You and Dad buried it under entitlement." His face tightened. "You'd really let the family fail?" he asked. "I didn't let anyone do anything," I said quietly. "You just didn't think I'd ever stop saving you." Later that night, my mother called. It had been almost a year since we'd spoken. She didn't even say hello. Just launched in. "Jacob said you turned him down." I stayed silent. She continued, You know how much this family means to us. If we lose the firm, your father—" Her voice cracked, but not from grief, from anger. "I always told him you'd come around eventually," she added, as if guilt might work better than logic. "Well, maybe you should have listened when I was in the hospital," I said. The line went quiet. I heard her exhale. "That was bad timing, Noah," she said. "You know how important the wedding was." I couldn't believe she still said that. Still framed my emergency surgery as some kind of selfish interruption. "You danced at her wedding while I lay in recovery alone," I said slowly. "Don't talk to me about what's important." She tried to change the subject, asked about my company, my apartment, even my health. I didn't give her much. She hadn't earned any of that anymore. She wasn't calling to reconnect. She was calling to recruit. Over the next few weeks, the desperation deepened. Former employees began reaching out, whispering about layoffs and missed payments. Some asked if there were openings at Grain Line. I met with each of them personally, quietly, respectfully. I offered jobs to the ones worth keeping, especially those Jacob never noticed. Engineers, analysts, site managers, people with real skills. I didn't gloat. I didn't mention my family's name. But I made sure they understood one thing. This company valued competence, not legacy. Then came the day they showed up together, Dad and Jacob, uninvited. My assistant buzzed in, confused. "They say it's urgent." I met them in the lobby, not in my office. I wanted my staff to see this. Two men who once dismissed me standing awkwardly in the very building I built without them. "Noah, can we please talk in private?" Dad asked, voice brittle. I crossed my arms. "If this is about a job, I'm not hiring family." Jacob winced. Dad scowled. "You're being cruel." I raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm just being honest, for once." They finally said it. The company was out of cash. Projects were suspended. Legal threats were piling up. They wanted me to step in, save what was left, and restore the Keller name. I looked between them. "You don't want me. You want a lifeline." I walked to the elevator, hit the button. "I'm not the safety net you cut loose anymore." Jacob tried to follow. "Please, Noah, think about the family." I stepped inside. I am. When the elevator doors closed, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. The boy they ignored had become the man they needed, but I had moved on, and I wasn't turning around. Not for them. Not ever again. The invitation came in a group text. A surprise birthday party for my niece, Jacob's daughter, hosted at my parents' house. We'd love for the whole family to be there. The message read, as if nothing had happened. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just the assumption I'd play along again. But I didn't delete it. I stared at it for a long while. Then I smiled, cold and quiet. They wanted a family gathering? Fine. I'd give them one they wouldn't forget. I spent the next week preparing. Not with malice, but with precision. Every photo, every voicemail, every screenshot of unanswered messages I'd sent from my hospital bed. I compiled them into a silent presentation, stripped of commentary. I wanted the footage to speak for itself. I called it What You Chose to Mississippi. No narration, just a timeline of betrayal. The moment I was admitted, the surgery, my recovery, me sitting alone in that fluorescent hospital room, watching their wedding videos from a borrowed phone. I arrived at the party exactly on time, dressed sharply, confidently, nothing flashy, but enough to make them notice the difference. My presence turned heads instantly. Murmurs rippled through the room. My mother hugged me stiffly. Jacob looked confused, suspicious. "Didn't think you'd come," he muttered. "Well," I replied, "you invited family, didn't you?" I watched the guilt flicker behind his eyes. But guilt without accountability is just performance. And I wasn't giving standing ovations anymore. They herded everyone into the living room for a video montage. We put together some baby photos. My sister-in-law chirped, "It'll be cute." I waited until the lights dimmed and attention shifted forward. Then, as the slideshow ended and clapping began, I stood up and quietly walked to the TV. "I have something to share too," I said. "Won't take long." They all turned, puzzled. I didn't wait for permission. I hit play. The screen went black. Then, my name on a hospital form. A slow montage began. Me in a gown. Monitors beeping. My vitals. Me clutching my chest in a waiting room. Then, a split screen. On one side, me post-op, tubes in my arms. On the other, my family, drinking champagne at my sister's wedding, smiling, laughing, toasting to being there for each other. The room fell into stunned silence. No music, no narration, just images, just contrast. People didn't know where to look. Some glanced at me. Others stared at the screen, eyes wide. My father's jaw tightened. Jacob looked like he might throw up. My mother's mouth hung slightly open. Then, clips of me trying to reach them. Voicemails. Texts. The unanswered call log. Last, the screen showed me in the hospital on the night of the wedding, eating Jell-O alone. The camera panned to the clock on the wall, 7:32 p.m. Just as they'd posted the first dance video. I turned off the TV and faced the room. I was in surgery while you were doing Congo lines, I said calmly. I needed family. You chose decorations. My voice didn't shake. I didn't yell. That would have made it easier for them to write me off as emotional or bitter. No, I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd done in their own silence. And judging by the looks on their faces, they did. My sister-in-law fumbled for the remote. That wasn't appropriate, she snapped. This was supposed to be about the kids. My mother stood, voice trembling with manufactured outrage. How dare you ambush us like this? I met her eyes. Ambush, I said. No, Mom. An ambush would have been me showing up during your reception. This was a mirror. She blinked. You're ruining this party, Jacob muttered. It was already ruined, I said. You just didn't realize it until now. No one moved. No one knew what to say. The air was thick, bloated with guilt and denial. My niece, bless her innocence, looked up at me confused. Are you mad, Uncle Noah? She asked softly. I crouched beside her, letting the weight of everything soften in that one moment. No, sweetheart, I said. Just done pretending. I handed her a small gift. Something thoughtful. Then I stood, nodded once to the room, and walked out. No drama. No shouting. Just the echo of truth in the air I left behind. Outside, the sun was setting. The air felt lighter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed them anything. They had shown me who they were when it counted most. And now they had seen themselves too, without the filters, without the excuses. I had carried their absence like a stone in my chest. Now, I had returned it to them. Let them carry the weight for once. I didn't wait to see if anyone followed me. I didn't need to. Some wounds aren't meant to be mended, only acknowledged. The silence I left behind wasn't empty. It was the loudest thing they'd ever heard. It had been 6 months since I walked out of that party. 6 months of silence. No birthday cards. No check-ins. No guilt-laced messages pretending things were fine. And honestly, I was thriving. I had a new apartment with plants I remembered to water, a job where people respected me, and a small, chosen circle of friends who knew my story and stayed anyway. I hadn't thought about my family much. Not because I didn't care. Because I'd stopped needing their approval like oxygen. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then another. Then a message. It was Jacob. His voice, tight and cracked. Hey, listen, man. I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you. Please, call me back. I didn't. Not right away. I let the silence stretch again, the way they had during my recovery. I finished my lunch, watered my fern, closed a client deal. I didn't owe urgency to anyone who once left me alone on an operating table. 3 days later, a text from my mother came through. Please, Noah, your brother needs you. It's serious. He lost control of the business, and Dad is talking about closing the family company. We need help. We need help. Not we're sorry. Not we miss you. Just desperation. When their golden boy finally tripped on the pedestal they put him on. I read it twice, then deleted it. I'd spent years building a life they barely noticed. Now they were noticing too late. The truth was, I had already stepped into my own power. After recovering from surgery, I'd started consulting. Quietly at first, small clients, local brands. Then I landed one of our old family firm's biggest partners. They said they liked my discipline, clarity, and emotional intelligence. Words no one in my family had ever used for me. I built my own team. One by one, I hired away their best people. Employees tired of Jacob's incompetence and my parents' blindness. I didn't gloat. I didn't advertise it. I just built. Eventually, one of their longtime clients, our most prestigious legacy account, called me directly. "We're leaving the old firm," the CEO said. "I'd rather work with someone who's earned respect, not inherited it." That was the day it hit me. I hadn't just walked away from their world. I'd outgrown it. And now, they were chasing my shadow, wondering how I got so far ahead. I didn't want revenge that burned bridges. I wanted truth that made them see who set the fire in the first place. Another voicemail from Jacob came a week later. This one almost sounded like the old us. "I was a jerk," he said. "I didn't realize what you were going through. I really messed things up here. They're talking about selling. I don't know what to do." I could hear his panic, his fall from grace. He'd finally discovered what it felt like to be overwhelmed and invisible. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was clarity. This wasn't about hate. It was about healing on my own terms. I typed out a message, then deleted it, then typed again. Finally, I sent one line. "It's bad timing. I'm sure you understand." No anger, no sarcasm, just his words, recycled, now with context. A mirror held up to his own cruelty. I didn't block him. I didn't lecture. I just stepped back. I had nothing left to prove. I'd become the man they never saw coming. And now, they couldn't look away. Later that month, my mother emailed me. "We're sorry. Truly. We didn't see what you were going through. If you ever want to come home, the door is open." I didn't reply. There was no home to return to. Not because the house was gone, but because I built something better. Real belonging. Earned respect. Quiet, resilient peace. I didn't need revenge to feel whole. I just needed to stop bleeding for people who never offered a bandage. One evening, I stood by the window in my new office, overlooking the same skyline I used to dream under. My assistant buzzed in. "Client dinner confirmed for 6. Car will be downstairs in 10. I thanked her, took one last look at the view, and smiled. My story hadn't ended in that hospital room. It had started there, in the quiet, in the loneliness, in the truth. Everything they ignored had shaped me, and now, everything they wanted was already gone. As I locked up and walked out, my phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Jacob. I watched it ring, thought about picking up, then slipped the phone into my pocket. I stepped into the elevator. Let the doors close. Let the silence return. Only this time, it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Not because they were hurting, but because I finally stopped hurting myself trying to matter to them. The story wasn't about them anymore. It never really was. It was about me. Choosing myself, walking forward, and never looking back. If you've ever been treated like an afterthought until they needed you, this story was for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. What would you have done in Noah's shoes? And remember, sometimes walking away is the loudest answer you'll ever give. See you soon in our next story.